I'm David Hepworth. Thanks for clicking this Word in Your Ear podcast, videocast thing for which there is no name. Mark Ellen and I have been creating in this line since 2007. And if any of it has met with your approval, then please click to subscribe because it helps. Leave a comment because we like to hear from you, and maybe even consider becoming a Patreon supporter because then, well, you'll be one of us. Visit patreon.com/wordinyourear for details.
This is Word Down Your Way, in which those about to tour salute you.
Welcome to this, where we're joined by the man magnificently billed as the longest-serving member of Fairport Convention. There ought to be some sort of medal. It's Dave Pegg. Dave, lovely to see you.
Hey, good morning, guys. It's an honour to be on your show. It's, I'm fans of you both.
Oh, how kind.
Our show, I think, is...
Do you have a medal? Do you have a medal for Fairport Convention? There ought to be a long service medal, didn't there?
Well, when I got to like 50 years, it was during the kind of COVID was happening, and I thought, I bet the band will do something. They'll do something for me. Of course, they couldn't do anything. We couldn't do any gigs or anything like that. But I thought I did buy a new bass guitar. I live in Brittany, and I bought like a copy of a Fender Jazz bass, which was one of the ones I had originally when I started with Fairport. And instead, I thought I mentioned it in emails to them. I thought, I bet they pick it up. It's going to be really nice, this, but they didn't. So I took the metal thing that holds the neck onto the body, and Chris Leslie kindly got it engraved for me. So, which is very nice of him, saying congratulations, 50 years and whatever.
Very good.
So you weren't, Simon Nichols in the band, and he joined before you, but you're the one who's been in the band the longest. Isn't that right?
Yes, yeah. I have to be careful how I say the longest member, because I wish that was the case. Having spent many an hour in the various showers in dressing rooms, I know I'm the longest serving member. Let's put it like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
we're going to talk about the Cropredy Festival again, which is happening this summer, and also the Fairport tour. But we wanted to take you back to the very first gigs, the very first shows you ever saw. Can you remember who the first band was that you saw?
Well, my favourite band at the time, and the first band that I saw that I really loved was the Shadows. Obviously, we all were Shadows fans. All of the guys who play guitar from, kind of my age. I'm 77. It was Hank was our biggest influence, and the Shadows were the first band I saw. I went to school with Brian Hines, or Denny Laine, as we all know.
Oh, right, of course.
He was, when I was in the first form, like a fag, he was in the sixth form. And he was a school hero because he got away with murder. He'd never wear his cap. He'd always have like odd, coats on instead of wearing his blazer. But because he was so good at athletics, he got away with it. He was a wonderful, very fit kind of guy. And of course, he went on to playing wings, and he was a great guitarist. And I used to go, while I was at school, just as he had Denny Laine and the Diplomats. I used to go and see them. That was with Bev Bevan on drums.
Oh, cool.
They were great. They were a great band. He had a green Gretsch Tennessean guitar, which I always wanted. I've got the Hutchings version of it now. There's another company that don't exist anymore, but they make kind of Gretsch-like copies. Anyway, it's hanging on the wall here at our house in Brittany. It's I pretend it's the green Gretsch Tennessee and the Denny Laine play.
Did you start on the bass, or did you start?
No, I started on the guitar, and I went on to, we all had groups like the Shadows at school. We had like a school band. And then when I
did you have the dances, the movements figured out?
Yeah, we had the kicks and all that stuff. We could do that, Yeah, I mean, everybody used to do it. It was de rigueur to be
It was.
if you had to if you're playing Apache, you had to have the movements and stuff.
Yeah.
FBI especially, that was the one.
Oh yes, quite quick, wasn't it? FBI.
You want to hear Richard Thompson play FBI?
I bet.
Richard plays all those things just as if it's they were created yesterday. It's brilliant. He can play every Hank Marvin solo, every Shadows thing with great authenticity.
I bet. So, did you see the Shadows early on?
Yeah. I saw the Shadows several times. In fact, when Hank Marvin, who's a wonderful guy, one of the things about being a musician, if you're lucky enough to get with anybody that's kind of well known, you get to meet some of your kind of heroes. And I met Hank. I've met him a couple of times. In fact, after the Shadows kind of folded, he started doing cabaret, and he was with Marvin Welsh and Fnarr,
Yeah.
and they were doing this kind of cabaret club in Birmingham. And one of the Fairport's, well, roadies we called them then, but one of our crew was doing the sound for them, and they were doing a residency at this nightclub kind of place. And I said, is there any way you can ask Hank if I could record them? And he said, oh, I'll ask him. So sure enough, I took my Revox. I had the second Revox tape recorder in Birmingham. The first one was owned by Jeff Lynne, who I must admit made much better use than I.
He did very well. Did rather well out of it, didn't he?
and knew how to do stuff with it, But I thought, I'll see what it's like. So I took it to this club, and Hank said, "Yeah, by all means, Dave. Yeah." I stuck a couple of Sennheiser mics up on the balcony, and he let me record the whole show, which was amazing. The other amazing thing about Hank, which people don't really know, is a Jehovah's Witness.
Yes, of course.
And in the daytime, he'd go around knocking on people.
Did he turn up with his glasses?
But he couldn't find the door without the glasses. But just imagine having Hank Marvin turn up on your doorstep. I mean, it must have been fantastic. And many years later, when I was with Jethro Tull, I played with Jethro Tull for 15 years, and we were in Australia, and we had a day off, and I knew that Hank lived in Perth. And on that afternoon, the Fairport's record company in Australia, they had kind of a bit of a press conference for us. And there was a guy there that I kind of recognised, and he'd been a musician in one of these bands in Birmingham around the time when we were all starting off. And his nickname was Muggsy. And I remember him because apart from having a very distinctive kind of characterful face, he had the pink Stratocaster with a maple neck, which was the same one as Hank had. So he was well known in Birmingham. If you got that guitar, you were in, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
You were in. And Muggsy, I said, "What are you doing now? Do you still play?" He said, "Oh, no, I'm a gardener. You won't believe who one of my customers is. It's Hank Marvin." I said, "That's incredible." He said, I'm sure he'd love to hear from me. I went, "Oh, no, there's no way." He said, "Here's his phone number. Give him a ring." So I phoned him up. I was worried to death. I thought, it's just calling him up out of the blue. This is years after the Birmingham nightclub thing. And I phoned him up. He said, "Oh, Dave, it's great to hear from you. My mate, Tony Newman's playing with Bjork tonight. I've got some spare tickets. Would you like to come?" Fantastic. So we went to see Bjork.
With Hank Marvin.
See Bjork with Hank Marvin. This is just, things you can't compute.
I know. It's like all your heroes from musically. You get to meet these people. I mean, luckily I've had some.
Did you go and talk to Bjork afterwards with Hank?
No, I didn't. I wouldn't have known what to say to.
No, I'd love to hear the conversation between Hank and Bjork.
But it's amazing. I mean, I met all of my heroes. I mean, when I changed to bass, two of my heroes, obviously McCartney. The chances of meeting Paul are slim. But I met him on a couple of occasions, and he was absolutely fantastic. I met him at the Odeon in Birmingham when he played with Wings, because Denny Laine was in Wings, and this is a terrible story, and it's true. And Paul and Linda, it was my ex-wife's and my wedding anniversary, and we took our kids along to Birmingham Odeon because the opening act, a chap called Earl Oakin, was it was a great kind of jazz guitarist and pianist, and you wouldn't think that he was the right kind of opening act for McCartney, but he went down really well. And his manager was the guy that looked after Fairport. That's how we got in. But we took our kids. Our kids invaded the McCartney's dressing room. They both got Paul and Linda's autographs. And after the show, which was devastatingly good, I mean, Macca opened with Long Tall Sally, and it's just, the place was jumping, you know. It's like, it was just absolutely amazing. And then there was a room, like a backstage room, with all the kind of well-known Birmingham musicians in it. Steve Gibbons was there, and I think Jeff Lynne was there as well. There was about 20 of us in this dressing room, and Paul came in to say hi and see what everybody thought of the show. And I was at the end of the kind of line and like sitting there, and I thought, what am I going to say to Paul McCartney? It's like, what can I say? And at the time there was this kind of joke appreciation that you do to musicians if you thought they were really good. And when you went to shake hands with them, you'd grab hold of their hand and pull it down to the floor and pretend to stamp on it. It was
weird.
Yeah, really. It was invented by Dave Mattox, I think, who was a drummer in Fairport at the
Did Paul see the funny side?
No, not at all. Listen to this. So I'm like absolutely terrified. He's coming up, you know, and I think, I can't think of anything to say. And just bizarrely, I grab his hand and pull it down to the floor and do. And he like looks at me and he goes, "What are you doing, mate?" It's like, I thought, he'll never forget me. It's like the musician's handshake. But amazing, yeah. And so I met Paul McCartney, and then I met my other bass hero was Rick Danko from the band, because the Fairports, we were all big fans of the band, the American band, you know. And when we moved to the Angel to get it together in the country, like all bands did at the time, we all had hi-fis, and the only albums that seemed to be played at the time were music from Big Pink and the band albums. And I knew every bass. I
was going to say, when a bass player meets another great bass player like that, is the temptation to talk about particular tracks and particular bass parts?
Well, bizarrely, it isn't, because you never want to let on that you know, you have to just pretend that you're a normal person, that you're not talking to God. You know, that's the problem. That's the problem. So anyway, I met Rick after a gig at a festival in Denmark when he was playing with like a little trio, and we went to the artist bar, and we drank an awful amount of whiskey. When I say an awful amount of whiskey, it was enough to send me to the hospital because I passed out and I had to have a stomach pump. I had to have a stomach pump, and the next morning I woke up, I could hardly talk, but I felt pretty good considering. And there was a bowling alley next to the hotel, and we went and played bowls, and I got my highest score ever. So there's a lesson there somewhere.
It's amazing the band lasted as long as they did.
Well, it's just, you know, we saw them at the Albert Hall with the Fairports. We all went, and it was just so good. I mean, you know, I mean, I'm sure you're both huge band fans as well, you know.
The Nick Lowe tells a story about when Brinsley Schwartz were rehearsing somewhere before the Isle of Wight, and the band were coming over for some reason, and they borrowed Brinsley Schwartz's equipment. And Brinsley Schwartz always thought, we ought to have better equipment, and then we'd sound like the band. And then they listened to the band playing their equipment, and they sounded fantastic. They realised it wasn't their equipment.
Well, not the equipment.
Exactly. It's like, it's what you do with it. With any instrument, it's like it's what your hands do with it. And really, I mean, they were just the best band. Anyway, it was an honour to meet Rick. And Can
you remember some of the bands you supported? I think you supported Spencer Davis at one point.
I'll tell you, I saw the Spencer Davis group. Obviously, Steve was a huge influence on everybody in Birmingham. It was, and in those days, people used to go and jam with each other. So Steve would come and jam with our bands and stuff like that. And one of my best memories is when I was still working in an insurance office called the Royal Exchange Insurance. I was in a little blues band called the Crawdaddies. I was still playing lead guitar then. And I'd bought myself a Telecaster and a Vox amp because I'd seen Jeff Beck with the Yardbirds as a club in Birmingham who just totally blew me away. It was unbelievable, Jeff. His guitar, it wasn't even a Telecaster, it was an Esquire, which is the one with one pickup. But the noise he was getting out of this, it's like, and I bought the Telecaster and the Vox amp thinking I'll be like Jeff Beck, but it's just like the Brinsley Schwartz story. It sounded an awful lot like Dave Pegg. but anyway, but in those days at Birmingham Town Hall, they had all-nighter dances like concerts. They were builders' dances to get away with, but they were concerts. So the Crawdaddies were booked to open and close this all-nighter. We went on at like 7:30 and we did an hour, and then we went on at like 6:30 the following morning for the last hour. And in between, you get to see all these bands. And this particular night, I mentioned this because it's so relevant to the kind of way that my music progressed, because one of the bands that was on after us, Chris Farlowe and the Thunderbirds, had Albert Lee playing the guitar.
Of course, who's at Cropredy.
He was at Cropredy, and he was a monster guitar, well, still is. But did you hear that about the Stormy Monday Blues on the Sue label, Little Joe Cook?
Oh, right, yeah, okay. Go on. Who is that really? Go on.
Well, that was Chris Farlowe.
Right, yes, of course.
And it was an incredible version of Stormy Monday Blues, and it was lengthy, so you had to turn it over to get the guitar solo. You turned over, side B was Albert's guitar solo, monster solo. And you wouldn't, when you play it now, it doesn't sound like Albert because, he went kind of country and he went to America and all that stuff. Anyway, that was one of the bands on, followed by the Spencer Davis group with Steve, who was just remarkable. And still is, just phenomenal musician and singer. And then John Mayall's Blues Breakers with Eric. What a night, like you're up all night and you're watching these three incredible acts, with great guitar players. And then you finish up like 6:30 in the morning, you've got to follow them.
Well, so you were the headliners.
Yeah, but
that's the way I'm looking at it.
Most people had gone home by.
Yeah, that's what I always
exactly.
It's like Jimi Hendrix in Woodstock, isn't it? There's nobody there.
Yeah.
So just going back to Birmingham, who are the great lost Birmingham group? Who are the group who never really got out of Birmingham? Because obviously the Move and so forth did, and the Moody Blues. Were there any lost ones?
Well, the Idle Race, which was Jeff Lynne's band, were just an unbelievable group. They never really made it nationwide. The band that I was in, the Uglies, which had Steve Gibbons.
Steve Gibbons, yeah.
Steve was fantastic, just a fantastic singer. Well, still is. I haven't seen him for a few years, but he was also brilliant at Dylan stuff. He just loves Bob Dylan so much. Well, as we all do, but Steve was a great interpreter of Dylan's songs. I don't think they made it they weren't as big as they should have been.
Right.
I can't think of I mean, the Moody Blues made it. I kind of lost touch with Birmingham and the bands that were coming out of it when I joined Fairport. You know, I'm not kind of au fait with any of the
Right.
younger bands that have come out. You know, when you're kind of my age, you get a bit skeptical after 1970. We're still,
Yeah.
you know. In fact, I got rid of most of my vinyl in 1970. I got it down to 300 albums because it was too much, and I'd stopped buying. There wasn't much coming out that I kind of could get into. You know, it's just old fashioned, really.
Right. So when did Cropredy start? What was the first one?
Well, Cropredy kind of started. I moved into the village with my family. Dave Swarbrick already lived there. In 1979, we kind of split up. We played at Nebworth on the day with Led Zeppelin. A bizarre choice for them, but Robert and John really wanted the Fairport on it. And in fact, history proves that we were one of the few bands that got paid. Actually got paid from that day. And we told everybody that we were having our farewell gig in Cropredy. It's a place called Peewit Farm. We'd done 3 years of not festivals as such, but gigs in the field in Cropredy to raise money for the local village hall,
yes, of course,
and funds like that. But Swarbrick was moving to Scotland, and we'd been paid off by Phonogram Records, a really nice guy called Ken Maliphant, who was the director of Vertigo, because we had a deal with Phonogram to make 6 albums, and we delivered 2. And they said, "Look, guys, we don't want any more. Thanks. We can't sell this shit, you know."
You have delighted us enough.
well, we went. Oh, well, that's a shame because we've signed a deal for 6 albums. So if you pay us for the other 4, we'll go away. And Ken, bless him, who thought we really wouldn't want to meet him and wouldn't appreciate what he'd done for us. Ken said, "Okay," so we were paid £7,000 each, and it was the first time we'd earned any money out of the music business. Literally, I'm not kidding.
No,
this for not making records.
Yeah,
I want to ask about this because Richard Thompson, who I interviewed years ago, said to me he'd never had a royalty check. Really, you know what I mean? He never kind of broke the advance and had, "This is what you've sold." Is that true?
Well, Ireland. I hate to badmouth them, but it wasn't their forte at the time. Chris Blackwell, who is again one of my heroes, is some people don't have a good word for Chris, but all I can tell you is he worked his slabs off for the Fairports. He did everything he could to kind of break us, and he got us deals with A&M in America, but we never made any money out of it.
Where did you make the money? Just from touring them?
Well, we never made any money. Basically, no. I mean, that's when I say that 7,000 quid, we were kind of, what do we do? This is like a fortune.
It's untold wealth.
£7,000 for not recording.
Yeah, psychologically, it doesn't help you mentally when what you do and what you love to do, you're paid because you can't. Nobody wants to buy it.
But it's funny with Fairport. It's a really interesting case because what Chris Blackwell and Ireland did in all that time, and Unhalf Breaking and Legion Leaf and all these things, and Full House, made you famous in a way that you continue to be famous to a certain.
It's bizarre. What Ireland sadly didn't do was when CDs happened and stuff. They took a long time to release the Fairport stuff. We'd already parted with Ireland then, and we had to set up our own label, which I did with my ex-wife. We started running the festival. It was a method of survival. And because the Fairport had ostensibly split in '79, but we were all mates, and we thought, like, we've got to get together from time to time to do stuff. Let's have a concert in the village. Let's every August get together, and that's how Cropredy came about. And it was very much people that we knew who wanted to play together, and all the ex-members wanted to come back. We never fell out. We were all.
Well, that's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
It is. It's very unusual.
Never to have fallen out. Well, I mean, at its biggest, how big is it, Cropredy? I mean, how many people?
The most people we've ever had there are 20,000. Our license, not this year, because you know what's happened with festivals, and a lot of them have had to shut down, and many of them have gone bankrupt. We've rethought the way that we're going to do Cropredy in order to avoid that. But in the old days, and we've had 20,000 people a couple of times.
I was there when it was 20,000. It must have been about 15 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
And I came, and I think I remember people arriving by barge. Or am I imagining that?
It's on the canal, so you get.
That's right.
There's a marina. There's a new marina there now, but narrowboats. People rent narrowboats. It's great. I mean, it's a great way to do the festival. We get about 300. I think 1 year we had 300 narrowboats people that attended the festival.
That's fantastic.
Well, that's so nice. So Fairport now is Simon Nicol, Dave Mattox, you, is it Rick Sanders and Chris Leslie is the basic core?
Yeah,
is that right?
well, Dave won't rejoin the band. Dave Mattox, he's got the record of coming and going the most. And
he's in the States, isn't he?
He lives in the States. Yeah, he lives in Marblehead near Boston, and he works quite a lot over there. You know, because he still does sessions. He's still in demand as a drummer, and that he comes over to play at Cropredy, luckily for us, and he plays on our winter tour when we do kind of February. We just did 27 gigs in 5 weeks in February and March. We have Mondays off to make sure we've got clean skids for the next week.
What are the things you have to play when you're playing at Cropredy? What are the particular tracks that you always end with?
You have to play Matty Groves and you have to play. Well, you don't have to play Matty Groves, but we feel that we have to play Meat on the Ledge because it's that song that's become an anthem, and it's kind of it has such a meaning for for so many people that we do that. And there's things. I mean, we try and represent the whole period of the band. It's difficult, obviously. We can't do a lot of Sandy songs because we occasionally will do Who Knows Where the Time Goes, which is still up there as a favourite of. Well, it was voted the top folk song of all time, was it, by the Beeb, I think.
Right.
But it's brilliant, and Sandy, we try and represent her. We'll do stuff from Liege and Leaf that we were able to do as an all male lineup, and we'll do stuff from Full House. This year it's the 40th anniversary of Gladys's Leap.
Yes,
this is which was our kind of relaunch album that we made in 1985. After this period where we'd spent the 7,000 quid each, Swarbrick had moved up to Scotland to become self-sufficient. He'd got a small holding. I mean, we were talking about being the longest member. In my recollection, he'd always had a small holding, but. but diminutive in stature, but a giant when he was plugged in, apparently. To quote Ian Anderson.
Too much detail here.
Yeah, and he realised that he wasn't that good with a shotgun, and there weren't enough rabbits and stuff and pigeons to live off. So he was quite happy to go back to playing music, but he didn't want to rejoin Fairport. So because he'd got his own band, Whippersnapper, with Chris Leslie, who was a local Oxfordshire musician, who we wanted in Fairport, but Swarbrick had already nabbed him. So we got Rick Sanders, who'd come from Soft Machine and kind of a different background to Swarb. And we got Martin Alcock, who was a wonderful multi-instrumentalist from Manchester. And that's how the band continued. We did about 40 consecutive nights in 1985, and we made this album, Gladys's Leap. We didn't have a songwriter in the band, so we persuaded people like Richard Thompson to give us songs, and Ralph McTell. We got 3 songs out of Ralph, one of which has become a Fairport classic, The Hiring Fair, which is a beautiful song. We do that most nights. We never say it's Ralph that wrote it, of course, because we just want the glory.
The glory.
Does he mind?
Well, when he's in the audience, we always big him up, but when he's not there, we just pretend it's one of ours.
Pretend it's yours.
So I'm intrigued by this. So you and Simon and Dave Mattox have obviously been playing together a long time.
Yeah.
You kind of reconvene, every 6 months or something like that?
Yeah.
And does it all just click into gear straight away?
Instant. It's absolutely instant. So is when I play with Dave Mattox, we never rehearse parts or anything. It's an instant rhythm section. You don't have to analyze what you're doing. It just happens. It's quite magical, really.
Yeah. So you've never questioned that since sort of 1970, 71 or whatever. It just happened.
No, because you don't want to ask questions musically. Otherwise, the risk of an argument ensuing and the band up.
Yes, never talk. We always talk about bands never talk, do they? Really? I mean, don't discuss things.
Well, the post-gig kind of moratorium about what went wrong, the longer you do this, you actually know what went wrong yourself. You know when you've played a bum nose or when things don't gel. In the early Fairport days, there was lots of that kind of discussion and stuff about how to approach stuff, but the kind of way that the Fairports work, it's always everybody chucks ideas and you sit around, somebody will come up with a song, if it's going to work instantly, because if you're having to think too much about it, it's not going to work for Fairport Convention. It's got to be a very natural, everybody just automatically chips in there a little bit. If it works, straight away.
But it is unusual, as David said, it is unusual that a band been going that long, 55 years or whatever, still really gets on well together. I mean, presumably that's because you haven't organised life whereby you're in these very intense periods all living on top of each other. You just get together and do this.
Well, we have, when we lived, we lived, for a year all together in the Angel, and you kind of, when you live in a place where there's enough hot water for one person to wash their hair, and there's 13 of you with long hair at the time, and the place is flea-ridden. The TV room is flea-ridden, and that's the only place you can go and watch the telly, which has been bought for you by the local police department for playing at their charity do. So it's like that, but you get to know an awful lot about your fellow musicians.
Was this Angel in London, isn't it?
No, it's in Hertfordshire, wasn't it?
This is the Angel, right? In Little Hadham in Hertfordshire.
Oh yeah, when you were in the country, yeah.
You know what? Now you've mentioned it, I've started scratching myself.
Yeah.
Wasn't it right? Didn't a lorry run into? Wasn't there something?
Yeah, there was a lorry came. It was on about 4:00 on a Sunday morning. We'd come back from a gig somewhere. We were all we'd all gone to bed, and it was on a narrow bend at the house. It was an old pub, the Angel, and the lorry came hurtling down the hill, missed the turn and went through the front wall. The lorry driver was killed.
Oh God! Really?
And Dave Swarbrick was in that room. It was a miracle that Swarb had actually actually survived. He was there with a girlfriend from America who'd come over because she thought Swarb was a big rock star. She was soon put right, and
she must have been very disappointed.
In fact, she only stayed another day after the lorry crash.
Well, after a lorry crashes through your bedroom wall, it's not.
Well, ironically, that was the best room in the house. It was the biggest room. It had been like the dining room or something of the pub. And Swarb had just furnished it with a load of antique furniture, which he'd paid a fortune for. And I say we never earned any money, but Paul Simon's manager had phoned him up and said, could he go to New York and play on a couple of tracks for Paul Simon? And he was going to be paid, I don't know, 2,000 quid or something like that. And Swarb had gone to the bank, advanced the money from the bank on the promise of the sessions, bought the furniture, put it in the room. The lorry came in, demolished everything, all the furniture. The girlfriend went back to the States. The next day, the phone call came, the session's off. He's not doing those.
That's the way it goes. That's the way it goes. So at Cropredy this year, you got Fairport Convention acoustic starting the show, and
well, when we say acoustic, we do a 20-minute spot on the Thursday just to welcome everybody, and then that's going to be followed by 50 people from the Birmingham Conservatory, Joe Broughton's folk ensemble. Joe is a wonderful fiddle player. And he teaches and runs courses at Birmingham Conservatory, and the 50 of them are going to come and join us, and they're going to play the Lark in the Morning medley from the Legion Leaf.
Very good.
Which is
that takes some rehearsal.
Well, these guys they're just monster musicians. they're all kids, you know. They're like 17 to 21-year-old kids, and they're just monster players. Lots of different instruments. They're not folkies, you know. They can play any kind of music. We've done this once before with them, which was such a joy. It's just a great way of launching the weekend. And then we finish off on Saturday night. In between, we've got, you know, if you look on the Fairport website, we've got Trevor Horn on Thursday.
Yes, I saw. Yeah,
it's a good idea.
Trevor's brilliant. He brings loads of surprise guests and everything, and it's fabulous. My son's band's played as well, the City Funk Orchestra. My son Matt Pegg's a bass player. He played last year with Rick Wakeman.
Right.
And he played with the Procols for 25 years.
Oh.
And of course, he loved the Procols. And when we lost Gary, that was, it was a big loss to everybody. But Matt's he's the City Funk Orchestra. They get down. I mean, it is get down. It's like there'll be people up on the feet if they can get out the chairs.
So
it's a brilliant show. I can remember that the members of the audience who brought their own pewter ale mugs with them.
Yeah, I think
strung from their belts, so they had drinking out of their own pewter mug. I thought, this is hardcore.
You still see a bit of that. It's a lot different now, though. It's the great thing about Cropredy is there's only the one stage, and people come and you can camp literally within 5 minutes walk, and you leave your car next to your tents.
Yeah.
So you've got no security issues with your belongings. You bring your chair, bring whatever you like on the field. We've got really good sound system and screens, and you sit there, you put your chair there, and then you're there for the whole of the day. You don't have to go traipsing off to find out where the other band that you want to see is on.
Yeah, there's a lot of folding furniture.
Yeah, but sometimes more than that. Sometimes it's big settees and stuff. It's like, I'm not kidding. It's like it's a really comfortable field to sit in. It's got a gentle slope, so you can.
Yes. It's part of your job, is it? You're the kind of mayor of Cropredy, aren't you? When that takes place, you have to kind of wander around and say hello to people. Is that?
I used to do that when I lived in Cropredy, because I lived there for 6 years, which is how come the roots of this festival. That's how come it gets its. All of the village take part in it. They all do things to raise money for their various good causes. of which there are many in the village. It's a very active community.
Yeah.
For them, it's the biggest thing that happens every year. The two pubs do more trade that weekend than they do in the rest of the year. You know, they both get involved. They both have fringe activities. They put music on, bands that, you know, I think the Brasenose you have to pay to go and see some of the bands there now, but I think the Red Lion it's free. So it's a great place to hang out, and it's such a picturesque village. You've got the canal.
Yeah.
You can walk around. It's just a very nice vibe there, and I think they're very proud of it. The fact
I'm sure they are. I know that. So, and you've guaranteed the weather this year, presumably. You checked all that.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, we always, you know,
it costs a bit, but it's worth it, isn't it? Getting that guarantee.
It's this year we've had to change the way that we do things in order for us not to go bankrupt, like a lot of other festivals have done. You know, you know, even big things like Cambridge.
Yeah.
You know, which is run by, you know, they lost 370,000 quid on their festival last year, and this is taxpayers' money in the Cambridge. We don't have anybody that sponsors us. It's the only people that pay for Cropredy are the punters that come along. So in order to guarantee that we can put it on, we're only selling 3-day tickets this year, and we're only selling 6,500 of them. And I'm pleased to say there's only 150 left.
Right.
This means we know exactly how much we've got to play with, and we can spend. You know, we've eliminated the risk of all the stress of not knowing how many people are going to turn up.
This is it.
That's the thing. It's such anxiety.
Yeah, it's just, I'll tell you, I went to my doctor yesterday, believe it, you know, and I had a blood pressure test. He went, it's the best it's ever been. It's
very good.
I know why. Because
the ticket sales are good.
You're not having to worry about
directly related to the ticket sales index.
It's directly related to the stress of wondering if we'll have enough people to come to pay the bills, you know.
I'm sure.
You know, but I'm so pleased we've got Gareth Williams, who kind of does all that kind of on site and all the work that, you know, Simon and myself can't do. We're not astute enough to be able to do all that stuff. He's done a remarkable job coming up with this method of survival, which is if it works this year, which it is, unless we get some mad cow disease or, you know, or some dreadful, you know, COVID type thing happening, we'll have a great festival.
Well, look, what's the date of that again?
August 7 to 9. Is that right? I think it is.
7th, 8th, and 9th.
Yeah, first week of August, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, it's brilliant to hear about it.
I'd love you to come up and see it because.
Well, I've been and I absolutely loved it.
I went years ago. It was fantastic.
It was,
and it's nice to have people with hair there.
Well, we'll have to get a narrowboat and do it properly.
Yeah. Well, if you want a narrowboat, you'll have to get in quick. They're probably all stopped now. Yeah.
Oh, it's lovely to talk to you, Dave.
You too, and thanks for your time. You know,
that's all right.
Thanks so much.
Always a pleasure.